What's going on, everyone? My name is Jasmine. On today's episode of the Slay Project, we're going to be talking about the disappearance and murders and suspicious deaths of Native men from Bighorn County, Montana. And all of these men are Crow tribal members unless otherwise specified. And if you have heard of Selena Not Afraid, Que Sara Stops Pretty Places, or watched a documentary on Showtime called Murder in Bighorn, you've probably heard of Bighorn County. And I've also done some cases from this area, and I will link them down below, and that includes the Little Light family. And if I think that you like this video, I could do another one just like it, but for the women. And if you want to see more videos on missing and murdered Indigenous people, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. Now let's get right into it. James Limberhand was 32 years old when he was last seen on August 7th, 2014, although some sources say August 6th. James was from the Northern Cheyenne tribe and lived on the reservation in Busby. The day he was last seen, he was with 3 of his friends who were also Cheyenne. According to his friends, they were drinking that day and decided to go swimming along the Bighorn River near Crow Agency at an area known as Two Lagans, which is south of Hardin. This is on the Crow Reservation and is about 40 miles from Busby. One of the friends said that James swam to the middle of the river and he called him back because the river was deep and there was a fast current. But he walked away from the area before James made it back to shore. When the 3 friends returned to find James a short time later, he was nowhere to be seen and has never been heard from since. The 3 friends say that they looked around the area for James for about an hour before they eventually left. They went to a nearby casino and were arrested for intoxication. They tried to alert the jailers to what had happened, and they were not taken seriously. The next morning on August 8th, after shift change, a jailer alerted the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office to what had happened with James. A search was initiated immediately. Parties involved besides the County Sheriff's Office were the BIA from both the Crow Agency and Northern Cheyenne Res, Bighorn County Search and Rescue, members of the Northern Cheyenne community, and the Limberhand family. The family went to the area on a daily basis for a while with members of their community. They searched along the river and were also in the water with canoes. James's father, Douglas, has since passed away, but in November 2014, he spoke with Native Sun News about the investigation. He said the first red flag for him was that James did not know how to swim and that he did not believe that James would willingly get into the water. He also wondered why his friends did not go for help at a nearby house instead of the casino. Douglas said one of the friends James was with had taken him to the spot where they said James's clothing was found. This would be the spot where he took off his clothes to jump into the river. He noted that it was a different spot from where James's wallet and keys were found. He alerted the BIA to the discrepancies and he does not believe anything was investigated. But if the BIA were thoroughly investigating, they would have uncovered this information themselves. Another possibility is that the group of friends were all drunk and maybe the BIA wrote off the discrepancy as that. Either way, it is sloppy work on behalf of the BIA. Douglas also expressed his frustrations about the BIA from the Crow and Cheyenne reservations not working together because of jurisdictional issues. And the many complex layers of jurisdictional issues on the reservations are what hamper a lot of investigations. One final clue Douglas discovered was when someone who lived at one of the friends' homes contacted him. The day after James vanished, this person said that they found his boots in the trunk of the friend's car. They were soaked with water. The boots were turned over to the family, and Douglas says that the BIA did not follow up on this. The official search efforts were called off around the end of October 2014. Douglas had also spoken with the FBI in Billings and requested that the 3 friends be given polygraph tests. The FBI would not do so because they do not suspect foul play. Was James a victim of violence or did he drown? 9 years later, his body has never been recovered. James was 6 feet 1 inches tall and weighed about 230 pounds when he was last seen. He would be 41 years old if he were alive today. He was last known to be wearing a black tank top, blue boxers, and black socks. Not sure if this description came from his friends or pieced together by process of elimination because some of his clothing was found at the river. I find it interesting that socks were mentioned, because who goes swimming in their socks? Darrell Scalpcane III was a very loved and cherished member of his family. His mother Roxanne says that he was a very bright and quick-witted person. By the time Darrell was 33 years old, he was struggling with alcoholism and chose to live on the streets. On the night of April 26, 2022, he was sleeping on the steps of the Bighorn County Library in Hardin, Montana. Darrell wasn't bothering anyone and was just sleeping when a person or persons came up to him and bashed his head in with a large boulder-type rock that was a part of the library's landscape. He was found by a librarian when they showed up for work that morning. He was flown out to Billings, but by the time he arrived, he was already brain dead. He died 2 days later on April 28, 2022. Darrell's family is heartbroken and want the person who did this to him to be held accountable. They are also frustrated with the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office over the progress of the case and the lack of media attention. They believe his case has been pushed aside because of who he was and the lifestyle he chose. Please do not be afraid to speak up if you have any information that will solve the murder of Darrell Scalpcane III. Howard Burlison Jr. was 26 years old when he went missing on December 4, 2002. He was last seen in Hardin, Montana. His 1991 Chevy Beretta is also missing. It is described as being maroon or red and has a license plate number of 22A7334, and the tags expired in 2004. Howard often goes by the nickname of Junior Boy. He is 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighed about 205 pounds when he was last seen. He would be 47 years old if he were alive today. This is all the information I could find on Howard's case. Marvitt Kenneth Dorr was 23 years old. He excelled in high school academics and sports, and after graduation he worked for the Crow Tribal Court. On the night of Saturday, April 4, 1987, he was in Hardin at the Corner Pocket Billiard Lounge. Afterwards, Marvitt and 3 of his friends were at a gas station when 20-year-old Charles Gus Field pulled up in a pickup truck driven by his cousin, Anthony LaFontaine. Both were from the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. Charles and Anthony asked Marvitt and his friends where the party was, and they followed them to the Two Lagans area along the Bighorn River south of Hardin. But by the time they got there, the party was already broken up by law enforcement. The group then went to another spot north of Hardin called Antenna Hill and were chased off by the cops. This was now about 4 a.m., and according to statements by Charles and Anthony, it was at this point that Marvitt jumped into their pickup truck. During the commotion, Marvitt's friends jumped into their car, left the area, and went their own separate way. They said Marvitt wanted them to drive to Crow Agency, and I am assuming this is because he wanted to go home. Anthony stated that his cousin Charles and Marvitt began fighting at some point, and he pulled over. They got out and continued to fight. He said he saw Charles get on top of him and hit him with what he thought were his fists. Anthony then said he pulled Charles off Marvitt and knew he was badly hurt and suggested taking him to the hospital in Crow Agency. Charles began to attack Marvitt again and drug his body out of sight and soon returned by himself, and the cousins headed home to the Cheyenne Res. Marvitt's body was found the next day on Sunday, April 5, 1987. He was found at about 1:30 p.m. in the Dunmore area between Hardin and Crow Agency. His autopsy showed that he was stabbed 49 times with a blade about 3 to 3.5 inches long. None of these stab wounds were fatal. But what had killed him was a slashed throat that was so deep that it cut major arteries and veins in his neck and trachea, and also cut in between the vertebrae in his neck. Charles Gus Field would be sentenced on November 30th, 1987, and he received 40 years in prison. I did not see any charges or sentencing for his cousin Anthony LaFontaine. Robert Garrett Stewart Jr. was 25 years old when he went missing on October 4th, 2013. He usually goes by his middle name Garrett or the nickname Baby Garrett. His father has the same name as him. Garrett lived on the Crow Reservation with his parents, Rosalia and Robert, at the time he went missing, but was in Billings that day to visit friends. He was reportedly last seen walking with friends near Jackson Street and State Avenue. It was the early morning hours. It was raining and snowing at the time, and it was stated that he may have been disoriented. I am not sure if this means intoxicated or possibly injured. FBI Special Agent Steve Lowe, who works out of the Billings office, has been trying to determine what exactly has happened to Garrett. Agent Lowe said, quote, "We don't know exactly what happened to him or if he came into some kind of harm," end quote. The FBI is offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to Garrett. Anyone with information is encouraged to contact the FBI, and they have stated that you can remain anonymous. Garrett also is supposed to wear glasses, but was not at the time he went missing. He is 6 feet tall and weighed about 130 to 150 pounds when he was last seen. His head was shaved and he was wearing a gray zip-up hoodie, faded blue Wrangler jeans, and a brown and white baseball cap. Hub Binion Williamson was 34 years old when he went missing. He and Garrett are cousins. Their disappearances are not thought to be linked. On April 9, 2019, Hub was last seen alive by family around 9 p.m. when he stopped by his aunt's house for a glass of water on his way home. I have seen this location described as being 12 to 20 miles from his own home in Hardin, Montana. He said he was on his way to his mom's house to help her make dinner. He was then going to pick up his tribal per capita check the next day. Hub never made it to his mother's house, and he never picked up his check. He was caught on surveillance footage getting gas after leaving his aunt's house. The gas station was on his normal way home. He appeared to be acting normal, and the truck he was driving was in operational order. According to his family, his truck was found on April 18, 2020, just over a year later in Lodge Grass, Montana. Lodge Grass is about 36 miles away from Hardin. It was not specified if this truck may have been hidden since he disappeared or if it was recently abandoned. Hub was last seen wearing Wrangler denim jeans, a blue sweater, cowboy boots, and possibly a red baseball cap. He was 6 feet tall and weighed about 200 pounds when he was last seen. Randolph Plentyhawk last had contact with his family sometime in 2016 in Hardin, Montana. He was last seen in Billings, Montana on January 8, 2017. He was 53 years old when last seen. He is 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighed about 180 pounds when he was last seen. He would be 60 years old if he were alive today, and he may also go by the name Rudy Chivers. If you have any information, you can contact Captain Michael Colvin with the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office at 406-665-9780 and refer to case number 2100798. Quentin Big Medicine was 43 years old when he was last seen leaving his Aunt Ethel's home in the Dunmore area north of Crow Agency on July 19, 1996. He told her he was headed to Billings. From what I can gather, he was on foot. His family and friends did not hear from him after this day, and within a couple weeks, a nationwide search developed. Quentin had friends in Seattle who helped post his missing persons flyers and create a website. His Aunt Ethel also hired a private investigator. Many tips came in, and his family believed he was somewhere out there, still alive. But unfortunately, his body was found by a rancher 2 years later on Saturday, August 15, 1998. His body was located within walking distance of his aunt's home in the Dunmore area. He was found in an irrigation ditch. BIA criminal investigator Wesley Stopp said, quote, "His body was in a spillway where wastewater goes. It wasn't very deep," end quote. The cause of death was listed as drowning. The only explanation given was that he was walking along the road when he fell and died. There was no other mention of a medical episode or injuries that would have caused him to fall face down in the ditch and not be able to get back up. The road he was walking on was Interstate 90, which for the most part is well maintained. The area he was walking in is not an extremely busy part of the road, and it is in a rural area. Wesley Stopps has stated that the tribal police and the FBI do not suspect foul play. And part of that might be because his wallet and other belongings were found on his person and returned to his family. Being in the wastewater and decomposition over 2 years basically destroyed any biological evidence or any physical evidence, such as being beaten. With no other mention of any other injuries, one can assume that he was not hit by a vehicle. So why would a 43-year-old man just fall into the ditch and drown in water that was not very deep? Something caused him not to get up. Quentin was a member of the Tobacco Society and a pipe carrier for his tribe. He was a bright person who earned a degree in psychology in 1975. He seemed to have died before his time. Michael Cody Plainbull went by the nickname Mike. He was a 23-year-old father of 3 when he went missing on December 12, 2013. He lived in Pryor, Montana, and that day he traveled alone to Billings to watch a basketball tournament. It was only 35 miles away. He was last seen on a Walmart surveillance camera just after 7 p.m. and he was buying diapers and presumably on his way home, but he never made it. His 1996 Ford Explorer was found about 11 days later on December 23, 2013, about 1.5 miles outside of Pryor. But there are a lot of different reports on how far away from Pryor the car really was. Most reports say 8 miles, but the 1.5 miles came from what his Aunt Terry Plainbull said. The family has said that the car did not appear to have been broken down and that there was a half tank of gas, but the keys were nowhere to be found. There were search efforts before and after his car was found, but the search did not find his body. Then in March 2017, it was announced that human remains were found near Pryor, and they eventually matched up with previous skeletal remains that were found in July 2014. Those remains were sent to the FBI lab, but there was never any more information released about them until the March 2017 discovery, when it was announced that both sets belonged to Mike. His cause of death is known, but investigators will not release it until the investigation is complete. No suspects or persons of interest have ever been publicly named, and I am unsure if they have any people they are considering. What happened to Michael? Did he offer someone a ride back home to the res? Was his wallet found with the remains? Why did the FBI not determine the first set of remains were his in 2014? He was a hard-working father who was just trying to make it home to his family when he was murdered. Please reach out to the FBI with any information. Levi Brian Yellowmule Jr. was 28 years old when he went missing on February 3, 2006. He was last seen about 7 miles southwest of Wyola, Montana on the Crow Reservation. He was walking on Little Horn Road near a family member's house. His ID was found in June 2006 near a pond on another reservation. I have seen unconfirmed statements that it was found on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. In 1997, when Levi was 19, he got himself caught up in an armed robbery of the Gary Owen Conoco Station with a self-proclaimed gang leader of the CIGs. I do not know if Levi still ran with or associated with any gang members at the time he disappeared, but please keep that in mind as it may play a role in his disappearance. Levi goes by his middle name Brian. He is missing a front tooth and has a 2 to 3 inch surgical scar on his hip from inserting a metal rod into his leg. When he was last seen, he was wearing a white t-shirt with a small logo, dark blue sweatpants, brown work boots, and white socks. His remains have never been found. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you knew any of these men, please share any memories of them, and I will see you in my next video.